So we're going to show you here how we take an observation on a child. Now bear in mind that what you're seeing on the screen looks exactly the same if you're using a tablet, and it's much easier to take a quick observation if you're using something like an iPad or an Android tablet, something similar like that. So what we do is we have our child's profile who we're going to take an observation on here. This child's currently following the EYFS curriculum. Let's imagine that Abby's doing something that we want to record. First of all, we click on Add Observation. This takes us into the first step of the observation process. The first thing we have to do is select the learning outcome type. So we have all curricular areas in here, which will all be familiar to you, and we choose whichever one we want to do. Now we've set one up here for moving and handling. It's very important here you do a very good quality evaluative description. So make sure you get as much information in there as you can. If you want, you can add in a next step in this section here. Next steps are optional. Not every observation will require a next step, but if you want to set a goal based on what you've seen in your description, you can add it into this section here. Next steps can also be tracked, so if you want to add this to the child's next step tracker, you can check this box. The date and time happen automatically, but if it was something that happened in the past, you're able to actually go back and change the date and the time. Upload a photo using this button here. If you're using an iPad or a tablet, the tablet will ask if you want to use its camera to take a new photograph. You can upload up to 4 photographs. This is great if you have a process that you want to document. So for example, the child may be learning to write their name or mark making. They start off with the first image of a blank sheet of paper, and by the end of it you've got the actual work that they've created. Now that we have our description, our next steps and our photographic evidence, we can move on to the next stage. Step 2 is about connecting the observation to the curriculum. Here we have a list of all the statements in the EYFS curriculum. We are currently in the moving and handling area, but we can move to any of these other ones and you'll notice that these statements all change. If we go down to the area for the age group for this child, we can actually now make selections. Simply choose the statement that applies to what the child is doing. You'll see these numbers on the right hand side. These are telling us the number of times a child has had an observation taken linked to that statement. So for example, our child Abby here has had 3 observations taken where we have identified that she can catch a large ball. The ones with a 0 mean that we've got no evidence and there's been no observations taken. This is really handy for identifying where there may be gaps in a child's learning and to help you with coverage and ensuring that even coverage is given. What you don't want is to have a situation where the child has lots of observations but in a very narrow area. Make the selection with these green buttons and you can choose as many of these as you want in different age ranges and across different curricular areas. They appear at the top of the observation. Before you can move on, you're asked to rate the child's understanding of what they have just done. By default, this is a red, amber, green scale, and you make the selection with these buttons here. Parents do not get to see the selections that you've made. This is for your internal tracking. While a selection must be made, there is no requirement for you to actually use the tracking. The next stage is about connecting to the characteristics of effective learning. Here we have the 3 characteristics, and as before, we can simply use these green buttons to add them to our observation. This section is optional, so no selection must be made here. The final stage is about connecting any previous next steps to our current observation. In the left-hand column, we have the description of what we have just observed. In the right-hand column are observations that have next steps which we have decided to track. In this case, this observation with this description had the next step: encourage Abby to perform stories and use her imagination using our drama area. What the system is asking us is, does the observation we have just done, does that achieve any of the next steps that we had identified previously? If it does, you can connect them using this add button, and what that will do On your next step tracker, it will show you when you had identified a next step and when you'd achieved it, and what the child had done to achieve that next step. Finally, choose whether you want to publish the observation, save it for later, or delete it. If you publish the observation, it will be available to parents when they next log into their account. However, even if you've published the observation, you can still go back and edit it, change photographs, and change your descriptions. Saving it for later will mean it's not available for parents to view. The last thing you may want to do is use the function we have down here, publish this observation for other children. You would use this in a situation where you have a group observation where there are many children taking part, or more than one child taking part in the same activity. The example I always give is in our nursery. We had a fire person come in and give a talk on fire safety, so there were lots of children involved in that activity. So if you do want to publish this observation for other children, check this box and click finish. You will then be shown a list of all the other children in the nursery. Simply choose which ones you want to add this observation to. This will copy this observation over to these children's profiles. You can at this stage choose to alter the observation that gets added to the other children's profiles. Once you've amended your description, click the Begin button to begin copying to the other profiles. Now the observation is complete, click the Two Observations button to get back to the child's profile.